city on a hill. Around the year 1680, the Dark Ages gave way to the Enlightenment, and the Enlightenment gave us the individual and his opened, unchained mind. It was a mind intent upon learning rather than believing. This was a revolutionary age when bold applications of rational thinking began to question the so-called God-appointed kings and the dictates of their brutal, implausible theologies. For more than a millennia, the God game had been scripted for the benefit of bully power. But now the awakened mind made it clear a man's destiny should be self-determined. He should cut his own path through the unfolding narrative of creation. A man, in a word, was free. Free, as John Paul Sartre would write centuries later, free whether he likes it or not. In the Enlightenment, autocratic authority began to be intellectually challenged by the piston-pumping machinery of logic, rhetoric, and reason. But this freedom of the individual begged the question of the individual's relationship to his own tribe. Was every man to be his own state, his own king, the enforcer of his own law? Was he beholden to nothing and no one? This sounded like a recipe for anarchy, unless men could agree on an idea by which they could be both free and governed. This is when legions of woke thinkers arrived upon the scene. Among them, the fluffy French philosopher Jacques Rousseau. He suggested that peace among men could be maintained by what he called a social contract, a tacit agreement administered by a state that the people themselves had created. With this arrangement, the chaos and violence of individuals twisting and shouting to the beat of their own drums could be held in check, mitigated, or even transformed into progress. But for this to work, for the state to survive, all men would be called upon to forfeit various versions of their personal freedoms. The people would be established as their own sovereign, ruled not by men, but by laws of their own making. And what a revolutionary idea this was. What a concept for a world long dominated by the ambitions of selfish, inbred, syphilitic monarchs. But still the question remained, how might such a bold idea take hold and become manifest? Well, it so happened that at this time, at this very dawn of the individual, a new Western continent was discovered by the explorers sent from the kingships of Europe. Upon this vast land mass, stolen outright from native inhabitants, history's first constitutionally conceived nation was founded. A new nation built in the churning wake of the Enlightenment, a nation birthed in fires of knowledge and objective theories, and where the natural rights of men were understood to supersede autocratic authority. Its founders saw their country as a beacon of freedom for the people of the world, a city on a hill. Abraham Lincoln, 77 years later, would reflect upon their courage and fortitude, saying that from the chaos and violence of political history, these men had planted the seed of the last great hope of humanity. The founders' understanding of what they were doing was clear. This nation was an experiment, a test of their theory that men could and should collectively rule themselves. This new country would ultimately question the very nature of man himself. Could he live civilly in a society of his own design, where the needs and interests of others often ran contrary to his own? Would the ideas and principles of the Enlightenment survive man's greed and insecurity, his attachment to comfort, to his tribe, his religion, his beliefs, and mythologies? Could he create his own governing force and then abide by its dictates? Could he sustain this new belief about who he was and what he was capable of doing? Or would man soon be tossed back into the dustbin of history and return to their place as subjects of kings and dictators and autocrats? In other words, would the light of the Enlightenment remain lit, or would the world eventually go dark again?